Now I'm slightly louder. Yeah, as I was mentioning, we're going to look at two main strands here, two main aspects. That's language and maths. Okay. So what are the areas we need to address within language and then maths? These are hearing, okay, which is the first one. Then we have visual, cognitive, and then we have physical disability here. Now, these are all types of impairments, so that's important to consider whenever we are talking about each four of these strands. Okay, so what are the four key principles when we talk about accessibility? These are generally the POUR principles, so perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Now, I want to just talk to you a little bit about Toolkit here. I saw, was it Miles yesterday, put up a definition of assistive technology. I want to talk to you about what the definition of Toolkit is, and that'll become a little bit clearer as I move throughout the presentation what I'm trying to mean with that. So we have Toolkit. We have two definitions here. So this is in terms of British language, a set of tools designed to be used together or for a particular purpose. And the second one, software designed to perform a specific function, especially to solve a problem. Okay. I think that is really, really important because when we think of assistive technology, we are trying to solve a certain problem, which has been a strand throughout the talks yesterday and also in the opening keynotes this morning. So at TextHelp, what we try and do is we try and build the student a toolkit for learning. Now this encompasses four different aspects, which I'm going to look at in the next slide. So that is the four main principles. I'm going to talk about three softwares from TextHelp. And we are going to show two ways that each one can help. And that's going to be across one college-wide, covering every student, which is really, really important. I don't know if any of you saw my colleague Patrick's presentation yesterday, wherever he talked about college-wide and addressing the needs of everybody. So one of the main points came from Patrick's slides where that it is necessary for some but beneficial for all. Okay, I have no particular identified needs throughout what I do, particularly in the workplace. However, I use software on a daily basis, whether that be Siri. I also have a Google Home at home, which makes my life so much easier whenever I'm turning the heating off, whenever my wife is trying to turn it back on. I can do it from my phone. So it's just a perfect example of how assistive technology can help everybody and not just those with a particular defined set of needs. Okay, so four main things here are progression, study, accessibility, and exams. Whenever we're looking at exams, has anybody here ever used a digital reader before? Yeah, you have? Yeah, good to know. Do you know which one it was? Okay, for exams? Okay, no problem at all. Trying to roll it out and see what works. Yeah, it's got to be their everyday way of working. They've got to be used to the technology so that whenever it does become to an exam setting, they don't have to think twice about actually using the technology and they can dive straight into doing the actual exam. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about Read and Write. Okay, so I am from TextHelp. Read and Write is our flagship product. Why is this so important? That it is a huge product. We have about 20 million users around the world. So a pretty popular product. It's also important to mention that TextHelp as a company have been around since 1996. Now again, why is that important? Because we see a lot of edtech companies that come in, they start up, they're around for 2 or 3 years, and then they die off. So the support isn't there. TextHelp have been around a long time. We know what we're doing. We work very, very closely with Microsoft and Google as well. So we are a Google Premium partner and device partner, and we're a Microsoft Gold Education partner. So everything we do in terms of accessibility, we work with Microsoft and Google. So we know all about Immersive Reader. Our Read and Write product is slightly different, and personally I think it is much, much better because you are not limited to the Microsoft platform. Three main things that I talk about whenever I'm addressing a crowd, teachers, professors, whoever it is, and I think this is really, really important whenever you're thinking about an EdTech strategy for your campus. And the first one is, how does this EdTech impact your students? Okay, so think about that. Second of all, how does it impact the pedagogy? And thirdly, which I have already mentioned, is if you're going to be rolling out software in your campus, it has to be able to be used on every single platform. That is not for us to decide as teachers and educators that we have to be stuck using Microsoft, we have to be stuck using Apple or Google. It is important that the software works across every platform. For that reason, you may be in AUB using Microsoft 365, but at home they might be using iPads or Chromebooks. You just don't know. So it is important that you have accessibility on every platform. As you can see here, read and write. We support reading, writing, comprehension, organization, study, and exams, and on every platform. Okay, so whenever a site gets a license, they get access on every platform. So you're not restricted or limited to one of those networks. What is Read and Write? I like to call it a one-stop shop for literacy support. It is a buffet of learning options. So it is important to note we do not provide content. Okay, what we provide is a toolbar that sits at the top of the screen, which I'm going to show you a little bit later on, and it gives you access to a plethora of tools where the student gets to pick what way they absorb information. So the student no longer has to rely on the teacher or their mum or their dad or their girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is, sitting beside them, helping them read or write. So how does Read and Write help with listening? So these are just animated GIFs. I love using GIFs. Our toolbar, this toolbar sits at the top of the screen. So as you can see, it means it's accessible 100% of the time. So whatever is on the screen, that toolbar is going to be there. Whether it be in Microsoft Word, Outlook, Slides, whatever it is, it's always going to be there. It means the same set of tools is there as well, so they're not going to differentiate between platforms. For instance, if you look at some of the other platforms that provide accessibility, you go to one aspect, I'll not name any names, but you go to one aspect, you might find it very easy to find text-to-speech, but if you go to another aspect of their platform, text-to-speech is about 7 clicks away. Okay, that is really important for us, that all the tools remain accessible 100% of the time. So how does it help with listening? Miles talked earlier on about the impact of text-to-speech. It's such a simple tool and has been around for quite a while, but we are really starting to see the benefits of text-to-speech in terms of statistics. There's been a lot of research that has been done. Text-to-speech, really, really easy. Within Read and Write, we just simply can highlight a document, or we can just place our cursor in the first paragraph and hit play, and it'll read it back to us. Within that text-to-speech, you can increase, decrease the speed, volume, the pitch, but you can also download up to 28 different accents. So if you have any Australians in your class, they can listen to Australian Karen, I think it is. If you have any Irish, there's Irish Moira. If you have any Americans, there's quite a few American accents in there as well. So I'm going to show you the software just for about 10 minutes at the end, and I have specifically put an American accent on the software because we're in AUB. You might notice there that whenever we hit play, there is a yellow background with blue tracking. Does anybody know anything about that? Why it's so important? So there's quite a bit of scientific research from the British Dyslexic Association, and those are meant to be the 2 best colours that those students with dyslexia process and track information. But that is also applicable to English language learners, English as a second language or English as an additional language. However, everybody is different and we learn in different ways, so that we can actually go in, hone in there and change those colours. Personally, I get a little bit bored of the yellow and blue, so I like to change it. But having that option just means that whenever I am having emails or whatever it is getting read back to me, that I have a colour that suits me. Every individual is different. Hello? So in terms of research, research is a really, really cool tool for higher ed, and I wish I had this whenever I was at university and college. Anybody, put your hands up here if you remember having to print out your journals and take out your physical highlighters, highlight in 25 different colours, and then try and annotate your notes at the side as far as possible. And then later on, you'd come back and you're like, flip, what was I actually trying to say there? What does this actually mean? Within Read and Write, we have digital highlighters, okay? So we have split up into 4 main colours. Yes, there are other programs that can do that, but the bit that differentiates our software is the ability to collect those highlights. So for instance, on this GIF, we have highlighted a few things in blue, purple or pink, depending on what way you kind of determine that to be. I think it's pink or purple here, and then on my laptop screen, I think it's pink. So as you can see, I've highlighted yellow, blue, green, and purple. Now you can do this from multiple sources. So gone are those days of printing out loads and loads of different journals or flicking between screens and trying to find where your information comes from. With our highlighters, you can highlight all the yellows from loads and loads of different resources. And then what we can do is we just click this little symbol here, collect highlights, and what it's going to do is pull up another screen, a Microsoft Word document or a Google Doc, depending what you're in. And it's going to group all the yellows together, all the greens, all the blues, and all the pinks. So there's your organization straight away. So you don't have to go through your journals and, yeah, you know. Good question. You'll see in a second. So here we go. We've just hit OK. So this is your new document open. There's your citation. Because my colleague Patrick has just taken this from his Google Drive, it's just said it's come from our TextHelp company email. Yes, you can. You can also choose what reference you want. Yeah, Harvard was my one at university, and it was a blinking nightmare. The amount of time that you spent and wasted on that was insane. I used to use a thing called Neil's Toolkit, where you used to have to put in the author, the date that it was written, and the title, and it would do it for you. It was a nightmare. Something like this just makes your life easy. I always like giving this to students that are in secondary school, because this is what they're going to have to do whenever they come to university. So the earlier they can get a grip on it, the better. PDF readers. How many times have you downloaded a PDF and thought to yourself, I really want to copy and paste that, or I want to find out what that word means, and you've tried your best to highlight the text, right-click, copy and paste, and it comes out all skew with. Don't need to do that anymore. Within Read and Write, we have our PDF reader. So you can have access to the PDF itself. So for instance, this is actually just an exam. These are the PDF tools at the top here. So for instance, you have text-to-speech, dictionary, picture dictionary, text-to-speech again, screenshot reader, translation, highlighting, which we've talked about already, vocab, typewriter. So typewriter is a really, really cool tool, because what it allows you to do is open up a PDF and put your notes directly into that PDF, and then you can export that again, or you can print it and it'll have your direct notes on that. So in terms of annotating your notes again, really, really simple way. We also have the pin tab. So if you saw a little pin there, we can go through the text, put a pin, and immediately put a note beside that. Okay, so if you are a teacher and you want to share a particular PDF and you want to put in some notes or instructions, we can just pop in the pin, put it anywhere in the text, and the student immediately has access. The reason why I love this PDF reader is everything, again, is in one place. Students are not having to come out of that PDF reader to go and find the definition of a word or find a picture or whatever it may be, translation. Everything is here. If you ever come across a picture and it has writing or text in that, and you can't access it, you can't select it because it's a picture. That is a really, really big problem for those that do rely on text-to-speech to get information. So how do we make that accessible? We have what's called a screenshot reader here. And what you can do with a screenshot reader is find a picture with text in it, simply draw a rectangle around that text that you want access to, hit screenshot reader, draw a rectangle around, and it'll automatically do the OCR process, so optical character recognition, and now you have access to that text. So in the Microsoft version, you can screenshot that to a new Microsoft Word document. You can have it read aloud on the spot as well. Personally, I like to export it to a new document, because then I think I have more access to it again. But as I said earlier, everything is here that you can do. Just showing there that you have the ability to circle different text as well, in terms of the thickness of the lines, colors of the lines. It just makes PDFs accessible, which has always been a real bugbear of mine, that PDF, on purpose, try and make everything inaccessible. So exams, okay? So this is our version of our exam reader. So this is our toolbar. At the top, you see all these different tools, which are really, really cool tools, which I'm going to show you. But we can't, if we're in an exam, we can't allow students access to the likes of dictionaries, picture dictionaries, and things like that. So what we actually do is we're just going to run through this here. So it's just showing the text-to-speech with the yellow and blue tracking, okay? But what we can do is go to our settings, and we can lock down. So we're just going to type in admin settings, enter a password, and now we're going to go to exam mode, and we can turn off all of these features, okay? So we're turning off various features here. So whenever a student has access to the exam, these are the only features that they're going to have access to. Okay, so they only have access to speech, voice speed, voice pitch, and auto read. So now, just hit this little button, and I have access to exam reader. How simple is that whenever we're thinking about digital exam readers? As an institution, digital exam readers are great because they actually save the institution a lot of money. But in terms of benefiting the student, if I'm in an exam and I struggle to read, and I have you as a physical exam reader, how many times am I going to ask you to read something aloud to me before I think, oh flip, I've already asked him 2 times. I don't really want to ask him again. I get a little bit embarrassed, or I can't actually understand him. Or is he trying to give me a bit of a hint? Is pitch, his intonation there kind of raised whenever there's a particular word? Okay, digital exam reader eradicates all of that. There's no hints, no tips from the human reader, but also saves a lot of money, but also builds confidence in a student. Because it is their everyday way of working, they come accustomed to using text-to-speech. They know an accent they like, they know a speed they like, they know a particular voice that they prefer, okay? We also have screen masking. So I choose the easy word of scotopic sensitivity. So those students that require color overlays or their screens to be tinted, okay? I know some of this features, for instance, is available within Immersive Reader, but what if you're outside of Immersive Reader, or you're in something completely different? You're looking at emails, but you need your screen to be tinted. That's one limitation of that. But what we can do is we have the screen masking, and we can tint our whole screen to a specific color. So we have what's called the RGB, which is typically given by the optician. We just go into our settings. The teacher or the student can input their RGB, and that tinting will actually follow them around. So whenever they sign in, all they need to do, hit the screen masking, whatever's on the screen will be tinted. Pretty cool feature, pretty simple as well. What we have actually found screen masking is used for a lot in the States is, well, put your hands up if you've ever come across students that are easily distracted. Yeah, everybody. I'm very easily distracted. I was on holiday a few weeks ago, and I ended up reading the same page of my book 3 times. 3 different days, because I thought to myself, do I know this? Have I read this before? Turned out I had. Screen masking can be used because you're not just tinting the whole screen. You can use it as a way of underlining certain text, and you can go through the document. Really, really simple way for students to use that as almost a finger point on the screen, going through it. It allows them to get distracted, do whatever they want, come back, and they know immediately where they've left off. Okay. What I'm going to do after the Maz bit is show you a little bit about the toolbar itself. And I think it is really, really cool because TextHelp of a company, we put a lot of money back into research and development. And what we have done in the last 6 to 8 months is released an Arabic version. Anybody here an Arabic speaker? Okay, I am not. So I'm going to show you a bit of text later on. I have no idea what it says. I think it's about volcanoes. It is about volcanoes because the guy earlier on actually said it was about volcanoes. One important aspect of what we do is we don't provide content, but I'll explain to you later on why that is so important whenever we come to the Arabic language. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Patrick to come up for 2 seconds just to speak for about 10 minutes on Equatio, our STEM product. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, pardon? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yep.
It has an engine built in called, we'll look at a different version of it later, called Snapburger. And what that's useful for is if you have a PDF which is not accessible whatsoever, or a PDF that just happens to be, say, a photograph originally taken of a textbook that has never been accessible, it'll recognize that. Amy shows the PDF screen, recognize it, and give you or the student the option to rescan it effectively through our menu. that part is all in English, yeah, it's not Arabic at stage.
That is not to say that it won't come in Arabic, because
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about what languages are supported, but now you're talking
You talk about
Arabic,
so
it's okay.
you are going to talk. Oh, you are going to talk about that. Some people say I don't need a microphone, but there you go. I think what Jamie started to show there was a number of different ways that we can start to make a number of different documents accessible on a student's own terms. But the other side of it is the tools are obviously there from a prep perspective to ensure that we've created accessible documents in the first place. So as an example, when we were running through, say, text-to-speech there, if you were in my session yesterday, we talked about UDL and we talked about the need for accessibility to make sure that content was available in a number of different formats. So something as simple as text-to-speech, the ability to have a button on there in the toolbar to automatically turn it into an audio file and make that available through a VLE or whatever the mechanism is you're distributing to students, starts to build on the principles of true accessibility, because not only are we giving them perhaps a physical copy, we're now giving an accessible. Where's the speaker at? We're not only giving them a physical copy and an accessible copy, we're giving them an editable copy, an audio copy, and then an audio copy perhaps interlaced with image material from the picture dictionary that Jimmy's shown. So we're going to go to, have you got the clicker there, Jimmy? We're going to go and take those principles a wee bit further, and we're going to talk about this thing. Nobody ever knows how to pronounce this. We work in a company of 200 people, and I think about 3 of us know exactly how to pronounce this correctly. But this is equatio. It's a play on the word equation, but equatio is how we pronounce it. And it was designed with a very simple principle in mind, and it was designed by a maths teacher originally a number of years ago. And the principle was this: if schools and colleges and universities are moving digital, i.e. students are getting access to devices as a par for course, but then also for accessibility, how on earth do we make maths digital? How do we make it digital, and how do we make it accessible and reachable within there? And it was designed to help to solve that. If you listen to, say, the student stories yesterday, you will have saw one of the student stories talking about the complexity of studying maths with a screen reader and having that read back, and LaTeX being read back, and it's quite complex when it's read back. This is designed to solve that as part of an accessibility toolkit. So the idea from a very general sense is that it helps students explore or engage that bit further with maths. So how does that actually look? Well, in terms of features, before we actually look at it, so think about our UDL principles, our accessibility principles that state, well, actually, we need to provide students with multiple ways to get maths or create maths. So how do we give them multiple ways? Way number 1 in equatio is very simple. We can type maths, but we can type it using prediction. So we build the language of maths. So for example, to type something as very simple as square root, rather than having to find the symbol, we can start to type SQ, and it'll automatically predict that that's what we want. So it's much easier and faster, but it's also building our language of maths at the same time. So we can type maths, that's easy, and we'll see it on screen in a little second. We can also handwrite maths. So from a physical perspective, if that's more accessible than a keyboard, we can handwrite it on any touchscreen device. And now that gives us the capability to automatically convert it into typed text and accessible maths text on screen. When I say accessible, the font size can be changed, the image size can be changed, it can be fully read back correctly from a mathematical notation perspective. So we can do that. We can also speak our maths. So we've got yet another way to get maths into a digital format. So we can simply switch the microphone on in our device, speak maths in a natural voice, and it will translate that automatically on screen. And this supports LaTeX as well, so we can go as high level or as low level. Equatio is one of those weird products in educational technology that works from an elementary level all the way through to higher ed and above. We have a lot of PhD students use this because it starts to bring clarity to the maths work and accuracy when they're starting to write high level papers as well and dissertations. So there's a number of ways to do it. There's a final way to enter maths in as well, and that's this. We recognize, of course, despite the fact that the world is moving digital, that we all still like writing our maths down. And how do we get that digital? Well, the old days would be
we could potentially take a photograph of the maths and we could submit that as part of our coursework or back to our tutor. The better way in Equatio is that we use our mobile device, our iPhone, our Samsung, our iPad, our tablet, whatever it happens to be, as long as it has a camera and a web browser. We take a photograph of written maths on a page, it'll automatically convert that into accessible maths, which can be read back, which is fully digital, which will go in any document. So suddenly in one place, and it's a toolbar, and we'll see it in a sec, we've provided multiple ways to access maths. So once we've created it, now it's easy to start to play it back. Because read and write that Jamie showed us has that magic play button, which allows us to capture that. So we'll go through and have a look at that. A couple of other things worth mentioning on Equatio is that it's not confined to written maths and standard maths notation. It has built-in notation for chemistry and physics specifically, above and beyond high-level maths, but it also has Desmos graphing built in. So we can take accessible maths, say we had to solve something simple like a quadratic, but we had to solve it with a graph. We can insert that from an accessibility perspective, then we can create a graph automatically all in a digital environment, all of which supports full screen reading, all of which supports full accessibility for maths across the board. So we've now given an enriched access to maths. We also have a thing called Math Space, which is probably a little bit lower level than university level in terms of its use, really designed at school level, but we'll have a quick look at that as we go through. So that's roughly what Equatio is, and just so we can bring some context to the visuals in terms of this. So if we look at how it works, it's a toolbar. It's going to work cross-platform, as Jamie has said. Down the bottom, when we want to open it, we start to type. So you'll see here we have typed the word equals, so EQ, and it's automatically recognized that as equals, and we can select from Smart Prediction. We have a LaTeX editor if students are used to that from an accessibility point of view. So we can create LaTeX automatically from the multiple ways we've been able to enter maths, or we can paste LaTeX in that we have already in a current document. We'll show you the power of that, and it will create the maths and pop it directly in on screen. And simple things you notice from this, it knows that an X symbol when you're typing it should not be written as the standard letter X. It is mathematical notation. It will write it correctly. And we have access to many text tools within there. One thing we also have, which students have praised us highly for, and it was something so simple, and we never put it in there originally, was a thing called multi-line maths. Why? Because students were used to things like math type and equation editor where we do one line at a time. So from an accessibility point of view, if you say, please solve this and show your working out, to go into something like math type and do one line, one line, one line, one line is a very slow process. In this window that we have at the bottom, a student has a shortcut key, or they can simply press Shift and Enter, and they can automatically put multi-line maths within there. And the minute they press Insert Maths, it goes straight into the document. So it gives them easy access to all of these things. And remember, we have the handwriting we talked about, we have the microphone, and we also have that mobile tool that lets us take a picture and insert it directly in. So we have loads of ways to do this. In terms of the actual user interface from accessibility perspective, all of this is fully compatible and compliant with any screen reader. So any screen reader, there's shortcut keys, it's fully accessible across the board and interoperable with anything else that we might want to use out there. And of course, it works directly with read and write to give you those additional playbacks. So we talked about languages, so of course we can change the language on the toolbar. Arabic is not on this toolbar yet, but it's coming very shortly, I'm told. So we will have that language there built in. And last thing on the toolbar is worth mentioning is there's a full function bank within there as well. So if you say, take the quadratic example, you say, right, work it out, and you just want a template for the quadratic, you can pull that up, but there's also advanced chemistry and physics formulas within there as well. You can, as a teacher, switch those off. So for a tighter controlled condition where you don't want to provide preset formulas, you can switch those off and pupils have access to those. And once you're done with that, we can pull that out of the way. In terms of screen real estate from an accessibility perspective, it's worth mentioning that this obviously can go full screen. So we have that as a full canvas. It doesn't have to sit as a mini toolbar, and we can increase the font size as much as we want on this to make sure we're seeing everything that we can. So those are the key features of Equatio in terms of inserting stuff in. So that's how it's integrated, and that's going to work in the Google Docs environment. It's going to work in Google Slides. It's also going to work in Microsoft Office and 365, and it's going to work on the web, which we'll come to in a wee second. In terms of expression, so we've seen how we can put maths in. So we can type it, we can speak it, we can handwrite it. But we've also got math space as well. This is linked in directly, and this gives us effectively manipulatives. So in this case, I've been asked to work out the volume of a sphere. I can add this on my smart shapes. I have freehand annotation around this, and this is obviously sped up to go very fast. And now I've started to work out this actual answer, and you'll see this is multi-line maths, and it started to predict what I'm typing to give me the correct notation. And once I finish this, and I come up with the answer, you'll see there's pi, the symbol pi has been inserted by me typing pi on that, so it started to predict. And once I'm finished, it's going to insert it directly back into this document. And remember, this document now is fully accessible because everything on screen can be read back and listened to, screen masked, all the things you saw in reading, right? And then if we take something like our graphing, so that's our Desmos graphing. We've simply taken the quadratic, we've popped it into the graph function, and now we have a fully accessible graph that can be explored on screen and read back as well. And obviously the size and font can change that. So we've got multiple ways to express our maths. So it's not just typed maths. It's the ability to put graphs in. It's the ability to put shapes. And those shapes will go to advanced shapes. They'll also go smart shapes. So if you happen to be dealing with very young children on doing something like this from an accessibility perspective, we can do something as simple as number lines or fraction banks where we can show how many things are shaded or unshaded. So there's multiple levels of access to create very visual maths on this and give pupils access to be able to manipulate that. So if we think about access, so we talked about read back, but what happens when we come across maths notation on the web? So what we can do here is, so we're showing here that we can obviously click on any maths content here and we can hit play and we'll hear that read out naturally in a multiple number of voices. What happens when we go to a web page? Equatio will automatically detect any maths on a web page. It will tell us that there's maths there by a little pop-up. We can drag a box around the maths, and in a couple of seconds, it makes that mathematical notation fully accessible. So any maths on a web page, it's identifying, you can play it back, the students can listen to it. What's more, you have a copy function. So I can take any standardized maths, whether it's originally been accessible or not on the web page itself. Maybe the web page hasn't made itself accessible. I can drag a box around it. I can copy the MathML or the LaTeX directly from that, which means from your student services perspective, when we're at a stage where we have to create more accessible documents, we can grab maths of any document, any PDF, any web page, take a shot of it, take all of the code behind it, and paste it directly in to make a fully compliant, accessible document. So it's not only helping your students access maths, it's helping your instructional designers and those people who are putting together accessible technology, tools and resources with just 2 clicks. So we've started to make things a lot more accessible there in Equatio. And that's just one part of your overall toolkit. The last one I'll show you is mobile because I think it's worth exploring. So this was a standard problem presented to a student on a Google Doc, and it was solve, yeah, you guessed it, solve for x the quadratic. That's because I left school at 16 years of age, and this is the only thing I know how to actually talk about in Mathsland. So solve for x. So I've started to type this in. Here's my quadratic. Now here's what happens. This is just the assignment I've sent to the student in this case. The student takes their iPhone. The student has already solved this in their jotter or notepad. They've taken a photograph with their iPhone. They've pressed save as maths rather than just an image. It's automatically converted it, and now what it's going to do is insert it. So this is on a different screen. So this phone is out here somewhere and it's being used. They've inserted it, and the correct maths is now being inserted in accessible maths on screen. So in terms of part of the toolkit, we've now taken all of the problems we had with maths, all of the complexities we've had with dealing with maths digitally and accessibly, and we've given students a toolkit to start to support their maths learning. So that really is, for me, Equatio. I'll take any questions now if you want, or I can take them at the end. Has anybody got any questions on Equatio now? Sorry.
For the part that has to do with handwriting,
Yep.
Does it support any touch screen capability? So instead of like handwriting via a mouse or a pointer, if a student comes with a pen and write and solve the equation with a pen on a touch screen.
As long as it's on a touch screen, yes. So for example,
So it's like an analytics engine which is analyzing the characters and transforming them.
correct. Yep. So if you Let me see if I can just jump back. You might just see at the start of this slide. So we'll let this run in the background here. So this is us actually doing it. Now this is actually using a mouse, which is quite difficult actually to use, to be fair. And it's automatically creating the maths on the fly.
This is a cultural issue. Here in Lebanon, and I don't know in other countries, most places, most students and even some teachers, they avoid like using the mouse. They don't feel the comfort unless they hold the pen and they, even especially in mathematics.
Totally agree. So if you take a typical stylus on any device, so a stylus or a touchscreen pen, as long as the device is touchscreen, for example, in our offices, all of our testing is done on a Dell XPS machine. I think that's probably what you're using now, Jimmy. And we give out styluses to all of our staff. So they very rarely will use their finger. They will never use their mouse, and they will certainly never use a trackpad because it's really unmanageable. So it's always going to be with the pen. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
You have another question there? Equatio can be used in Google Sheets and in Office 365, so you can use that directly. It looks slightly different in Office 365 because the toolbar sits probably like you saw in Jamie's demo. It looks a little bit different in the Windows environment. It sits below or on top of the actual 365 window, so it just looks a little bit different, but yeah, it supports it. Sorry, explain that one to me again. Is there any errors? At the odd time, there is, absolutely. That very rarely happens. What I've seen it do is, depending on the spacing on the decimal points in terms of students' handwriting, that is the one area that you can see. But bear in mind, the maths is fully editable because when it's been pulled back in to this window, so when it's been pulled back into this window, we can press edit maths and we can correct that very easily. So again, it's a bit of self-efficacy in a way because we still want to check that the maths, we can't take it for granted that it's going to be necessarily flawless, but we can edit it really easily. And in fact, I did it when I recorded that shot. It was exactly that. The decimal place, there was a space in it, if you notice on the first screen. So all I did was simply click the cursor on the bottom and delete one space, and now I know I got it correct. Any other questions on the question? No? Jimmy, over to you. Snapper? That's just with camera.
Yeah.
This, by the way, just as Jamie's getting ready, this is the iOS version of the question that you asked earlier. Normally this is built directly into the web browser, so it kind of intercepts places that it knows aren't accessible. This gives students a very quick access to a document like that. Just take a photograph and suddenly it's next to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we saw an example of this actually yesterday. And what we have here in this GIF is literally a printed out document. Usually whenever I show this on the phone, I'll go into a classroom and find something on the wall that has been relevant. I'll take a picture of it. And what we can do is immediately have it accessible via Snapfurter. Okay, so this is all part of this toolkit of learning that we're providing students. So we're covering the literacy aspect of things, we're making things accessible, we're covering Equatio in terms of maths, and we're covering Snapfurter, where it might be an old textbook that a teacher loves using or a student wants to get some information from. We can simply take a picture of it and capture any document and turn it into speech, essentially. So all we have to do is take a picture, upload it, it'll give you the tick to say it's okay, and we hit the finger and we immediately have access to it. Really simple tool, but also a really powerful tool. I like to use this if I'm out and about with a class on a field trip and they see something of interest on a plaque. They can simply take a picture and they have access to that information on a way that they want to absorb that information. Yeah, go ahead. Either or. Yes, at the minute, yeah.
It's free as well, by the way. Any student can go grab that and download it and use the exact features.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. It'll speak. Did you see the little hand with the pointer? So see whenever it goes down here. So we're taking a picture, okay? And then you'll see this little finger here come up after it goes to 100%. Okay, see here? I just hit this and then I can place wherever I want it to go. And I'll start to read it out. Yeah. Now again, we're following on from this toolkit for learning, toolkit for accessibility. And now we're going to talk a little bit about Browse Aloud. So Browse Aloud is all about making websites accessible. This is Browse Aloud. This is part of the TextHelp umbrella. And it is very much like read and write, but it sits and it's embedded on a particular website. You have access to text-to-speech, translation. I can turn text into MP3s if I'd prefer to hear that on my mobile phone or wherever it may be. Say if I'm on a website and I want to use it for revision, I just download it as an MP3, put it on my phone, and work away. We have the screen reader, which you can increase or decrease the size of text. We have the magnifier. Simplify is a really, really powerful and cool tool. So what Simplifier will be, if you go to, say, BBC News or wherever it may be, and there's always loads of pictures, there's always loads of distractions on there, I can just go to Simplify. Simplify will it'll strip out the text from that website, put it onto a new tab, and you can simplify the text or increase the lexile level of the text. So it'll change the text into simpler words so you can understand it better, and then if you increase it, it'll gradually bring the more complicated words back in. Really, really easy tool. Then we have the settings and we have the floating toolbar. Now what's really, really cool about Browse Aloud is that it will follow the page down. Sometimes when you look at accessibility on websites, you either have to scroll to the very bottom or scroll to the very top, and then that's it. This will follow you around as you navigate throughout the screen and throughout the actual different sub-sites, as we call them. So you're always going to have access to these tools within the websites themselves. Yep. So here it is here. This is just our website. So you have the orange headphones. I always think it looks like Beats by Dre, you know, the headphones. We actually coined it first. So this is a toolbar, and we have access to text-to-speech. So there's our reader. We have our magnifier as well, and then we have our highlighting. And again, we can change those into various colors, whatever the student or the person using the computer wants as well. Magnifier, we have a translation. Yes, it will work in Arabic. There is a lot of languages there. I couldn't even name how many, but it will translate into everything. That is also really important in terms of a university level. If you have students, say, from China, and they're coming to your website to get information, there's no point in providing it in Arabic or English because they're not going to be able to read it. So the ability to have 2 clicks and change it to Chinese is pretty powerful. And these are just the settings within the web accessibility again. So again, we're all trying to draw this back to provide a toolkit for learning. So we have the literacy, Equatio for Maz, Snapverter, make written documents accessible. And then we also have our Browse Aloud, which makes our websites accessible. Okay, so those are all the 4, 3, 2, 1 principles. So we've had our 4 problems, showing you a few TextHelp products to address them. And all of these, if you would like to have more information, there is flyers at the front, or come down and see us. If you have any other questions, you can let us know. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to be clear on Browse Aloud, that is brought by an institution, and the institution then inserts it onto the website, onto the server, so every single builder is accessible. So whereas read and write obviously in the toolbar is supplying everything, Browse Aloud is supplying to every single builder to the site, and effectively gives every builder accessibility.
Somebody else had a question there? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to ask about the Arabic API resources.
Okay.
Accurate are they? When we're talking about the translation, because like for the time being, we know that Google is the
Yeah.
highest
So,
translating tool that people use here in our world.
yeah,
And sometimes even there, the translation is not
100% accurate.
100%. There
Okay.
may be some kind of accuracy
Yeah, so there's Google Translate as you know it, and then there's Google Translate that we use. So there's a paid corporate version. That is the version we use in our website. So think Google Translate and times it by about 3. It's still not 100% accurate, to be honest with you, but that is technology. It's always changing, and it will always get better.
We know the challenges
Yeah.
faced by technology with the Arabic language specifically because
Mhm.
it's a highly effective language.
Oh yeah.
So it makes it really difficult to even not only to provide accessibility tools, but also provide resources.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I actually want to show you here is, okay, so this is the Arabic document I was talking about earlier on, and it's about volcanoes, am I right? Yes, okay. See, I do know something. I can say 5 words in Arabic really well. You'll notice here, this is read and write, so this is what we call a discoverable tab. So whenever a student logs in, this is all the encouraged use. So they see that, and they think, flip, what's that? So I'll click it, and we'll see what happens. So now we have access to the toolbar, and you'll notice the toolbar pushes everything on the screen down, which means it's access 100% of the time. So as you'll see, all these tools are in English, but what I'm going to do is go to settings, and I'm going to change them to Arabic. I hope. So I'm going to select Microsoft Naive Arabic. You'll notice it says Saudi beside it. That is because for some reason, whatever way Microsoft have listed the voices, the Saudi voice is the only one that will read standard Arabic. I have no idea why, but we have that built in. I like to slow it down a little bit as well. And then there's your referencing style. So, for instance, you can change it whatever way you want. And what I'm going to do is go to languages, and then go to Arabic. Okay, so you notice everything switches around, and we now have the Arabic language. If I just place my cursor anywhere in the text and hit play,
البركان هو تلة مخروطية أو جبل يتكون من مواد مضغوطة تخرج من خلال فتحة أو تنفيس في قشرة الأرض. Okay, so one of the main difficulties with the Arabic language, which I'm sure you know, is the ability or the presence of the diacritical marks above the letters. Because we don't provide content, we have to be sure that what we are reading is accurate. So our engine will actually take letters and words that do not have those diacritical marks present, and it will put them on in the background to be able to pronounce them correctly. It has taken a long time to do that, and it is still a work in progress. The beauty about our products is it is a subscription license so that you can continue on, and we will make changes through it. I personally, or so I've heard, that the translations or the speech there is pretty accurate. It's probably not 100%, but I think it's pretty good, and there's nothing there really to rival it, to be honest with you. Any questions on the Arabic version?
Can I work for it?
Yeah,
I'm asking a lot of questions.
it's okay.
Like if you look for English and other languages, they have female and male voices. With the ability to not only switch, but the ability to control the speed of speech.
Yep.
Is that available for
Yes, so you can adjust the speed of the voice and the pitch and intonation. You cannot change it to a female voice yet. Not yet. Because this is all pretty new, even from Microsoft's side, and the only thing that they started with was a male voice, to be honest with you. But hopefully that'll change.
It's good to know that some language improvements are being done because
Yeah.
from the Arabic.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? No? If you do have any other questions, or you think of any other questions, come down and see us. We're at the end of the stall. We're going to be here for the rest of the day. Hopefully next time I come out, we'll see a lot more of you guys using the software to provide your students with an accessible platform. Thanks very much.